This program contains dramatic reconstructions of real events based upon witness testimony and the report of the U.S. government's 9/11 Commission.
At airports in Washington, Newark, and Boston, 19 members of Al-Qaeda prepared to commit mass murder. Their weapons, pocket knives, cans of mace, and passenger jets. America suspects nothing.
That Tuesday, September 11th, was like any other Tuesday morning. It was only unusual in that the president was going to travel to Florida, but it was just like any other day.
I had a breakfast, and I went into my office next door and sat with my CIA briefer, who every morning would come over and brief me on the latest intelligence.
But some intelligence has been missed.
American 11, Boston.
8 a.m. American Airlines Flight 11 takes off from Boston, bound for Los Angeles. On board is Betty Ong. After 14 years as a flight attendant, she will rewrite the rule book in the face of disaster.
American 11, climb maintain level 290.
90, American 11.
15 minutes after takeoff, 5 Al-Qaeda terrorists take over the plane. Standard airline practice is comply with hijackers because they will land and begin negotiations. This advice was never designed for suicide attacks.
We have some planes that stay quiet and you'll be okay. We're heading to the airport.
American 11, are you trying to call?
Betty Ong has a decision to make. Her training manual says, don't be a hero. She decides to go against her training and makes a call.
Hello?
What is your name?
Okay, my name is Betty Ong. I'm number 3 on flight 11.
Okay.
The cockpit's not answering. Somebody's stabbed in business class. And I think there's mates that we can't breathe. I don't know. I think we're getting hijacked.
Assuming they've declared an emergency. Let me get APC on here.
Betty is the first person to warn America of Al-Qaeda's assault.
Hijack out of Boston.
Her message quickly reaches the FAA in Herndon, Virginia.
Is he squawking hijack? Is he squawking something?
The supervisor said there's a possible hijacking out of Boston.
Ben Sliney, National Operations Manager, caught in the crosshairs of the greatest attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor.
It was crystal clear. The sun was coming up, the sky was blue, and I thought to myself, well, this will be a relatively calm day.
American 11, if you're here, Boston Center, ident.
An air traffic controller for 25 years, Sliney is in day 1 of a new job.
American 11, if you're here, Boston Center, ident, please, or acknowledge.
He's in charge of all 4,000 commercial aircraft in U.S. airspace.
We couldn't get a report on exactly where the aircraft was, except that it was southbound. The tag was now drifting or in ghost status, meaning it's not receiving a current signal from the transponder.
American 11 goes rogue
He will not respond
and changes course for Manhattan.
He's turning, yeah, I turned him 20. Oh, okay. And he's only going to 29. Okay. Well.
As the plane descends, Betty Ong helps identify the hijackers by revealing their seat numbers.
Passengers were from first class.
They were sitting in 2A and B. They are in the cockpit with the pilot. So they might have gone their way up there or something. Nobody can call the cockpit. We can't even get inside. The door won't open.
American 11, Boston.
Is anybody still there?
Yes, we're still here.
Okay. I'm staying on the line as well.
Okay.
We have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York. Is this real world or exercise? No, this is not an exercise, not a test.
So you have a general location as to where he is?
We're still tracking him right now.
You're tracking him. Can you give me a line? Our number 1 got stabbed. Our purser is stabbed. Nobody knows who stabbed who, and we can't even get up to business class right now because nobody can breathe.
American 1-1, the American on the frequency. How do you hear me?
Have you guys called anyone else? No. Somebody's calling medical.
American 11, Boston.
You're doing a great job. Just stay calm, okay? We are, absolutely.
There are 87 passengers and crew on board, and 10,000 gallons of aviation fuel.
Ma'am, are you clear? What's going on, Betty? Betty, talk to me. Betty, are you there? Betty? What, do you think we lost her? I think we might have lost her.
What is your name?
My name is Betty Ong. I think we're getting hijacked.
Betty Ong is among the first victims of 9/11. But her decision to go against her training has a critical impact. America knows this is no accident.
There's more out there, but we don't know. Let's get them over Manhattan. At least we got some kind of play. We need to tell them if this stuff's going to keep on going, we need to take those fighters and then put them over Manhattan.
Within minutes, 2 F-15s are scrambled to defend a city needing air cover for the first time in its history. But the Air Force is unaware that a second plane, United 175, has been hijacked over Pennsylvania and also aimed at New York.
Breaking news now on 1010 Wins. This just in, a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
All right, Pat, we are just currently getting a look at this latest
and there's a fire in the building right now. I can hear from the fire truck that there's a lot of fire personnel and police personnel over there.
We felt the explosion and felt the building rock.
Kelly Ryer, with no emergency training, will make split-second decisions on which lives depend.
We just did a 180 and looked out my window and saw a huge fireball.
Ryer's office is high in the undamaged South Tower. Just yards from the impact, he sees right inside the other building.
You could see people blinded by the smoke and the fire and the explosion just walking to the edge and falling out of the building. And the first time that I saw that, my stomach just dropped immediately. We then started to see other people fall, I guess wandering through the blinding smoke or the fire, and then saw people consciously jumping. I can't describe the emotion when you realize that someone just jumped out of a 90-story building.
Ryer evacuates, but on the 78th floor, he thinks again. His building is untouched. He goes back up to his office.
For me, it was a choice to go up or go down. I wanted to go up to get the things I needed if we were going to be out of the building for an extended period. So I made the choice to go up and stepped in the elevator. The doors were just closing. The first thing I thought of was whatever happened in that other building just happened in this building. This is the moment of your death. flames are coming through, they're singeing my hands. The air is getting hotter and hotter. It's filling up with smoke. I'm having difficulty breathing. If I don't get out of this elevator fast, I'm gonna die. It's a test of survival.
Another plane just hit. Right? Oh my God! Another plane has just hit.
United 175 hits the South Tower. Its left wing carves into Ryer's floor.
In the middle of the building.
Did you hear the explosion from your position?
Yes, we did.
You saw a plane?
Yes, I just saw a plane go into the building.
I and my entire staff watched United 175 crash into the World Trade Center.
Wait a minute, a plane hit the World Trade Center.
It was clear to me at that point that we were under attack.
A plane just hit the World Trade Center?
Yeah.
It's on the news?
What we had in the sky were a series or several uncontrolled missiles.
We just had a report of the second aircraft hitting the tree.
4,300 planes are in U.S. airspace. National Air Traffic Manager Ben Sliney has no idea how many are being flown by suicide bombers.
It was the job of me and my entire staff to figure out how to deal with this situation, how to gain control over those aircraft.
Grounding planes will reduce the threat, but grounding them all is unprecedented.
I ordered a national ground stop, meaning that no aircraft in the nation could take off.
Stop all traffic. Stop all traffic. Stop all traffic. We'll take it through.
They're grounding all aircraft at this time.
Planes taxi to a halt across the country. But there are still thousands in the air. Al-Qaeda has already hijacked American Flight 77 and aimed it at Washington, D.C. And United Flight 93 has left Newark bound for San Francisco with 4 Al-Qaeda members on board. America's decision makers will soon be tested to the limit.
Good morning, and it is not a good morning in New York City. A major disaster, a plane crash.
It's been another one, Carl.
Yes, he hit building number 1.
The other building.
Went into the...
2 planes, 2 terror attacks. America is in a state of emergency. Leaders are spread around the country. They get information slowly. Florida, President George W. Bush visits an elementary school. He's with 16 children and the national media. All he knows so far is that a light aircraft has hit the North Tower. Behind the scenes, his chief of staff gets an update.
I was told that the second plane had hit the tower. I thought this was very, very serious.
Andrew Card, at the heart of government. Another American facing a day of tough choices.
I was facing a test that chiefs of staff have to face. Does the president need to know? The answer was obvious, yes.
Card must decide how to deal with this situation. No one wants panic in a room full of children and cameras.
In the classroom were very young elementary school students, second graders, and a gaggle of press at the back of the room, a press pool. I made the decision to pass on 2 facts. I opened the door to the classroom. I wanted to be very efficient with my words. I did not want to do anything that would invite a question. I was not looking to have a discussion, and I was trying not to stand in the spotlight very long. And there was a break in the conversation at the front of the classroom, and I walked up to the president, and I leaned over and whispered into his right ear. A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack.
Let's clean that up. Get ready for the butt. Get ready.
I don't think that I appreciated how dramatic it was, but I knew that I was telling the president something that a president had to hear.
I was glad the president didn't bolt out of his seat or do anything to introduce fear to those young kids. I'm glad he did nothing to demonstrate fear to the media that would have translated it to the satisfaction of the terrorists around the world. Instead, he completed the obligation that he had in the classroom.
Thank you also very much for showing me your reading skills. I bet they practice too, don't you?
Oh, yes. That's a requirement. Homework, reading homework.
Reading more than they watch TV?
Oh, yes.
I was pleased that the president didn't come back into the staff room right after I whispered in his ear, because if he did, everyone would have come to him, and we had a lot of logistical work to do. We were able to get the crew back on Air Force One, get the Secret Service to turn the motorcade around. We were able to get some remarks drafted for the president to make to about 1,000 people who were gathered in a gymnasium just on the other side of the classroom.
Thank you, Press. If you can step out the door, we can, please.
Mr. President, are you aware of the reports of the plane crash in New York? And is there anything?
Talk about it later.
Thank you all.
People only know me because I whispered in the president's ear. I wish that no one had to whisper in a president's ear the way I did.
Someone trapped on the 104th floor. 25 to 30 people. Sure, if you can get out of the building, then get out of the building. If you can't, open up windows.
Thousands of workers are trapped in the World Trade Center. The lucky ones stream out of the lower floors. Hundreds of firefighters are going into the towers.
We didn't hear about it, we heard it.
Jay Jonas, Battalion Chief, Ladder 7. 20-year veteran. His decisions will affect many lives.
It was the most dramatic thing I ever saw. And if you looked at the holes, they looked like the shape of an airplane. And you saw smoke and fire coming out under pressure. And the first thing I thought of when we were coming across is, oh my God, there's a lot of people in need of help right now. There's people that are trapped and they can't get out.
The World Trade Center just blew up. Yeah, we got it. We're on the way. Explosion.
Yeah, we got it. Do not leave. Okay, there's a fire or an explosion or something in the building. I want you to stay where you are.
Jonas and his team are entering a war zone. 110 floors, elevators out of action, stairwells filled with debris.
There was one fireman that walked into that building and thought that this was a routine operation.
The World Trade Center.
Yeah, we got it. There's something crashing.
One of them looked up and said, "We may not live through today." And we just looked at each other and we acknowledged his statement. We said, you know what? You're right. We took the time to shake each other's hands and wish each other good luck. I said to them, I said, they're trying to kill us, boys. I said, let's go. And to their credit, every one of them says, okay, Cap, we're with you.
Okay, we don't know what's going on right now. We just got there. Unless you're reporting, people trapped something, don't call. Department 408, where's the fire?
Each firefighter hauls 100 pounds of protective equipment and tools. The nearer they get to the fire, the hotter it gets in the stairwell.
I figure if we took the floors 10 floors at a time, 10 floors, catch your breath, get a drink of water, do 10 more. And we would keep repeating that, and I felt that they would have a little energy once they got to the 80th floor, the 90th floor, things like that. One of the great quotes in one of my fire textbooks that I've read over the years is that a building that's on fire is a building that's under demolition. So you don't know what's going on. We just approached this as if it was the worst high-rise fire in history.
Planes have crashed into each of the towers of the World Trade Center.
Building number 2 is here. Debris flying through the air over the East River here into Brooklyn.
President Bush is now
In Florida, Andrew Card prepares the president for an emergency statement.
to bring you his comments.
I was all business. I was focused on helping him. I did not think about my wife. And we live right near a potential target, the CIA. So I was focused on helping the president do his job.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
Andrew Card's priority is to get the president in a position where he can run the country.
We were anxious to get the president into a safe place where he could communicate with the people he had to communicate with, and the best place to go was Air Force One, and we were anxious to get him there and get up off the ground.
The decision carries risk.
There was speculation that someone had used the code name for Air Force One, and that the plane that the president would be flying on was somehow a target and might be subject to an attack. I did not want the president to be in a position where he was vulnerable. And we were rushing to get into the air so that the plane would not be a target sitting on the tarmac. I didn't know what other attacks are coming.
The 78th floor of the South Tower has taken a direct hit. Yards from where the plane wing exploded, Kelly Ryer is trapped in a burning elevator.
I got as low as I could, put my foot on the side of the elevator. I took my briefcase and started to yank the door as hard as I could. And I have to get it out of this elevator within seconds, or there's not going to be any air to breathe here. The gap was probably maybe 18 inches wide, but it was enough to wriggle my body through. The minute I crawled out of the elevator and was able to breathe, sort of get my bearings, the first thing I saw right in front of me was a dead body with no head, just a spinal cord sticking out of the neck. As I crawled out of the alcove into the main sky lobby, that's when the real destruction became evident, because what was a sky lobby teeming with people sort of making decisions to go up or down or wait for friends was a wasteland. It was complete destruction. There was almost an eerie, destructive quiet filled with smoke, moaning, and bodies. I would shake any body that I came across to see if they were alive, that I could help them. Most of the bodies I came across were dead. One of the assistants who I work with appeared right in front of me out of the smoke. Her name was Donna Spira. She was terribly injured. So I took my shirt off and tied it around her wounds.
Donna's survival depends on getting her out fast, but it's 78 floors to safety. The United States is under attack. Military systems are unprepared. A pair of F-16s scrambled to protect Washington, fly out to sea. Following Cold War protocols designed to stop Soviet bombers, not Al-Qaeda terrorists. The nation's air traffic control can't cope. There are still 4,000 planes in America's skies. No one knows how many are in Al-Qaeda's control.
We're also lost American 77.
Okay, 77. Americans, we're looking for persons.
They lost radar with him, they lost contact with him, they lost everything, and they don't have any idea where he is or what happened.
The hijackers aim Flight 77 at the heart of government, Washington, D.C.
We had no idea where it was safe and where it wasn't.
Condoleezza Rice, National Security Advisor, faces a day of decisions to ensure the continuity of government.
If you're going to do what I was doing as National Security Advisor, you might as well do it at a time of consequence. and this was a time of consequence.
The White House is an obvious target. Rice is inside. Other key leaders and generals are spread across the world. It would take many hits to get them all. But the commander-in-chief wants to return to Washington to lead.
The president got on the phone and he said, "I'm coming back." I said, "You cannot come back here. The United States of America is under attack. You have to go to safety. We don't know what is going on here." And he said, "I'm coming back." I said, "You can't."
Plane hits the World Trade headed towards Washington.
I said to him in a raised voice, and I had never raised my voice to the president before, I said, "You cannot come back here." I hung up. The president was quite annoyed with me, to say the least. I know President Bush, and I'd known him for a long time, and I knew that he wanted nothing more than to be there at the helm of the ship.
The other one we have headed towards Washington.
This could be a third aircraft.
It could be a third aircraft going on to Washington.
Washington is in Flight 77's sights. The Pentagon is the U.S. military's command center. 23,000 staff run the defenses of a superpower, unaware of a new alarm at air traffic control.
We did have the last known position of American 77.
A rogue plane is spotted, flying erratically over the suburbs.
Latest report, the aircraft VFR 6 miles southeast of the White House.
6 miles southeast of the White House.
Yep.
6 miles east.
Aircraft is moving away.
Moving away from the White House.
Realizing that his F-16s are flying away from the danger,
6 miles east of the White House.
the Air Force controller makes a desperate appeal.
Turn it, Brian. Crank it up. Here we go. This is what we're going to do here.
Miles east of the White House. Run them to the White House. I don't care how many windows you break.
Flight 77 loses altitude and drops off the radar.
Yeah, we just lost track.
Where'd it go? Somebody dropped the aircraft? Yes. Who dropped the aircraft? I don't know.
It's deviating away from the White House towards a bigger target. There are 59 passengers and crew on board.
Radar only.
I got him. I got him.
As the crisis mounts, communication systems are failing at the heart of government.
The number of cell phones that were used to communicate the most sensitive information. The terrorists were monitoring our communications. They would have heard a lot on cell phones.
The president's secure telephone stops working. He's forced to borrow an unsecure cell phone.
The president was trying to track down Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. I was trying to help track him down, too. It wasn't just the president. There were others trying to track him down.
I tried to reach Don Rumsfeld. He was needed in the command center, and I couldn't.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I looked behind me.
There is smoke pouring out the Pentagon.
And a plane had hit the Pentagon.
We don't know whether this is the result of a bomb or whether it is yet another aircraft that has targeted a symbol of the United States power, but there is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon.
He actually felt the jolt from the airplane hitting the Pentagon.
Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, must direct the military response while under attack himself.
It felt like a bomb had hit the building. I mean, the table shook, the whole building shook from the impact of that.
300 yards from the impact, Rumsfeld rushes to see the crash zone.
I was told where it was and immediately ran down the hall, went down the stairs, and smoke was coming in, filling the halls to a point that you couldn't proceed inside the building.
The initial explosion burns 10% of the jet's fuel. 9,000 gallons remain, flowing through offices and corridors, igniting everything it touches.
There was giant whooshing sound through the building.
Former U.S. Ranger Chris Brayman will go against orders to save lives. A Gulf War veteran. His own office is now a war zone.
My office kind of moved. The window cracked from the compression coming through. I gained composure. I said, "Got to get out, everyone get out, get out, get out." There was a man struggling carrying a baby. I grabbed the baby from the man's arms and I ran with explosions going on the left-hand side.
Within minutes, Donald Rumsfeld is surveying the crash zone, surrounded by injured colleagues.
I got down there very early, and there were people helping people out of the building. The fire department and the ambulance services and the police departments had not arrived yet from the county. It was a terrible sight.
Pentagon got hit. You heard that? What? Pentagon just got hit. Apparently it's pretty serious.
Rumsfeld is torn. Coordinate a military response to the attack or help his injured staff.
When the building is burning and people are killed and people are trapped and people are trying to help them out, you don't immediately think, well, what ought the United States of America do about this? You instead think about the individuals. I stayed down there, a matter of minutes and helped with one stretcher with somebody.
I saw Donald Rumsfeld carrying a bodyboard with his team. Holy cow, here's the Secretary of Defense going into the depths of battle together.
Many wounded are trapped inside.
I called out to Jesus, "God, Jesus, you have got to help me."
Sheila Moody, Pentagon accountant. Her fate is in Chris Brayman's hands.
I heard the sound of the airplane engine. The fireball passed by me. The heat was so intense. My hands are burning. There were voices, there were screams, there was moaning, and then there was just silence.
The western wing of the Pentagon is set to collapse. The county fire chief gives an order: stop all rescue attempts. No one is allowed back inside.
All I could hear is the echoes of screaming in my head. Just, help, help, or people screaming and you can't get to them.
Brayman can accept the fire chief's orders and stand down or go back in.
All I remember is seeing an image in the window standing there like this. I just reacted. And I just kept saying, we gotta go, we gotta get back in. What are you guys standing here for? And I just said, "Dear Lord, give us the strength we're about to do." All I knew is there were people dying in there, and I had to get back in at any cost.
Brayman's training kicks in. With no oxygen or protective clothing, he enters the burning building. He'll earn the Soldier's Medal for bravery and the Purple Heart for his injuries.
Each of us are called to do something, and we're tested. We don't know what we're capable of doing until you're put in that situation.
People are in absolute panic. They are running away from the building.
The World Trade Center and the Pentagon are already in flames. Where next? Millions look to the skies and the government. With the president in Florida, National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice must try and stop the chaos from going global.
When the second plane went in, I knew it was a terrorist attack. When the plane went into the Pentagon, I thought it might be all-out attacks all over Washington, all over the United States. But you can't give in at that moment to dread or fear. You have to act. The Secret Service came in and they said, "You have got to go to the bunker." I remember just being driven along, almost propelled along. We had no idea where it was safe and where it wasn't. We didn't think the bunker of the White House was safe at that point.
100 feet below the White House, the government is in crisis.
I got to the bunker. The vice president was there. He was on the phone with the president. Norm Mineta, the transportation secretary, was tracking tail numbers of aircraft on a yellow pad. He's calling out. He's saying, what happened to 671? What happened to 123? And he's trying to make sense of what's going on. My first thought was, get a message out to the world that the United States of America has not been decapitated. These pictures must have been terrifying. And that it must have seemed that the United States of America was coming apart. My test was to keep my head about me and to make certain that people around the world didn't panic.
Rice calls U.S. diplomats worldwide. 3 miles away, the acting chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff races towards the burning Pentagon.
I needed to get to a place where you can start to then participate in our military command and control system.
General Dick Myers. On a day unlike any other, he must advise his civilian bosses on what military decisions to make.
So we're driving from Capitol Hill across the Potomac River on the 14th Street Bridge, and there's this black smoke coming out of parts of the Pentagon. I mean, it was a feeling like, am I having a dream? Or is this a very bad movie?
Myers enters Pentagon Command, expecting to see the Secretary of Defense.
I said, where's Secretary Rumsfeld? And I was informed that he had gone outside. I said, well, somebody ought to tell him that he needs to be here.
Rumsfeld joins Myers in a command room. Together, they must try to form a response.
Right there, no idea who it is.
Rumors of new hijacks overwhelm civilian air traffic control and the Air Force.
Look, another one to Las Vegas.
We're not doing so good right now.
Yeah, I know.
And we were receiving reports of other aircraft in the air that were either squawking hijack or were not responding properly, or in some cases were simply not responding at all.
The Air Force has no flight plans for civilian airliners and no idea whether a plane is simply off course or hijacked.
Okay, doesn't help us. We can't interrogate.
Yeah, I got it. Sorry.
There's pandemonium at the highest level.
There was this story that a bomb had gone off in front of our State Department over here. We were proceeding on the basis that was real. It later turned out to be that was a false report.
Despite all of the sophisticated hierarchy, sophisticated command and control, sophisticated equipment that we had, at that moment, much of it didn't function very well. And people instead did whatever they could to communicate messages. And frankly, we then had to make it up.
The western section of the Pentagon is about to collapse. Chris Brayman is deep inside, searching for survivors.
We couldn't see anything. It was just pitch black. Fire and heat were coming out of there. It felt like an instant sunburn going in. And we could barely breathe. To the right of the point of impact, the bodies were in basically pieces. There were just human remains everywhere. And some were even sitting down in chairs, as if nothing would happen until you lifted them up and then they would crumble.
Sheila Moody is trapped in the accounts department.
I'm looking around and I'm trying to find a way out. I climb up on some debris and I take my hand and I bang it up against the window to see if I could break it, but it was hopeless. It was too thick, so we're just trapped. And I called out to Jesus and I was just like, God, Jesus, you have got to help me.
We just kept kneeling down and going through the different areas with the smoke billowing across, and I kept yelling, come to our voice if you can hear us, and you could hear people scream. It felt like hell, combat. the smells, the screams, injured soldiers going in. The only difference was I could not shoot back.
And then I hear a voice calling, "Is there anybody in here?" And I called back to him. I said, "Yes." I said, "Yes, we're here." He says, "I can't see you." I said, "I can't see you either." I said, "But we're in here. We're in here." And with that one, with that last call, I couldn't breathe anymore. I'm doubled over. I'm coughing. And a voice in my head just said, "Clap your hands."
There was a woman on the ground clapping. I didn't hear her clap. I just saw motions. And in that split second, I just reached through the billowing clouds and I grabbed this woman.
Somebody grabbed my hand on the other side of the smoke and then just pulled me out.
30 minutes after the attack, just after Brayman pulls Moody free, the southwest wall collapses. 125 staff die in the building.
Has crashed into the Pentagon in Washington, and now they are evacuating the West Wing of the White House.
Staff have been leaving the White House since 9:20 a.m.
Everybody back.
After the attack on the Pentagon, they are told to run. Within the hour, the Sears Tower in Chicago is also deserted. Mayor Giuliani orders a mass evacuation of Lower Manhattan. But below the White House's East Wing, a World War II-era bunker is packed with top officials.
There were so many people in the bunker that the oxygen levels started dropping. And the Secret Service came in and said, "We've got to get some people out of here." They literally went around telling people that they weren't essential and they had to leave.
Condoleezza Rice and Vice President Cheney remain, struggling to maintain some structure in government. The President and Commander-in-Chief is still in Florida, on board Air Force One, accompanied by Chief of Staff Andrew Card.
The plane, it started to roll down the runway, and it took off at a very high speed and a very steep incline. It flew in a serpentine way while we were waiting for some fighter jets to catch up with us and also trying to decide where to go.
Unsure if Air Force One has been targeted, the pilot takes evasive maneuvers. His destination, unknown.
The president was anxious to get back to Washington, D.C. The Secret Service was appropriately concerned and said, "We can't go there. We don't know what's happening." And I was kind of caught in the middle, negotiating between the president and the Secret Service and trying to discover what a good place to go would be.
With the highest authority in limbo, ordinary people step up to make decisions.
We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards the New York metro area.
Air traffic control is swamped with unreliable information.
Trying to figure out, A, what exactly was going on, and B, what to do about it.
National Air Traffic Manager Ben Sliney is in charge of all 4,000 civilian aircraft flying over America. Any one of them could now have an Al-Qaeda pilot.
All I can picture is planes flying out of control.
Sliney has already stopped all new flights taking off. But this situation requires a more dramatic solution.
What do we do? Let's land the sons of bitches. You know, let's land everybody. Get everybody out of the sky. Sort of like separating the wheat from the chaff. If I land everyone who takes the orders and lands, then what's left are the bad guys. But I had no historical precedent for that.
Sliney's 25-year career is on the line. Landing so many planes at unfamiliar airports is dangerous and expensive.
It would displace thousands of people. It would force the airlines to spend enormous amounts of money. All of that was in my mind, but it was a necessary order and I was going to do it.
Sliney clears America's skies for the first time in history. 45,000 passengers are diverted to Canada. Hundreds of incoming international flights are turned back.
If I have one regret, it's that I did not order it sooner than I did.
One flight pays no attention to Sliney's order. United 93, flying from Newark to San Francisco.
I heard It sounded to me like a struggle. But it was so garbled, nobody knew for sure what it was.
John Worth, air traffic controller in Ohio. The first to discover what the whole country is dreading, another hijacking.
United 93, Cleveland, do you still hear the center?
I hollered at the desks and told them that we had a problem. I think it's this United 93.
We'd like to remain seated, one aboard, and going to back to the airport, and we have our demand, remain quiet. United 93, understand, have a bomb on board, go ahead.
We felt like we had a guided missile in your airspace because we had no idea where he was going to go. Was he headed to Chicago? Was he going to strike Cleveland? And at that point, I thought there's a nuclear plant right on the shore of Lake Erie.
Worth raises the alarm, but the FAA and the military are chasing other threats. A Delta flight isn't responding.
You got anyone after that Delta flight?
Yes, sir. Delta Airlines 89er is a hijack headed. It is in your sector currently right now.
I said, I don't think it's the Delta. They said, well, are you sure? I said, I'm pretty sure it's this United.
United 93 turns toward the nation's capital.
At that point, I thought, where's President Bush? Where's Air Force One? And where the heck are the military?
It won't be the military that saves Washington.
I answered the phone, and it was Tom.
Dina Burnett. Her husband Tom is on United 93. Together, they will make one of the most important decisions of 9/11.
I said, Tom, you're okay. And he said, no, I'm not. I'm on United Airlines Flight 93, and it's been hijacked. I felt this incredible panic inside of me. He said, I need you to call the authorities. I'll call you back. My first thought was, who do you call for a hijacking? I called 911. I was connected to the 9/11 operator. She connected me to the police department. They transferred me to the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department transferred me back to the police department. And they passed me on to the FBI.
We have any Pentagon just got hit. CNN.
The FBI is overloaded with calls.
I kept trying to explain to them that this was not one of the airplanes that had already hit the World Trade Center.
Sitting near Tom is Mark Bingham. He calls his mother.
He didn't seem particularly upset, but as a flight attendant, I realized that Mark and his seatmates were in very grave danger.
Alice Hoagland knows her son faces a critical decision.
We knew that it was a race against time, and if there was going to be a difference made in that situation, it was going to be by the people who were on that flight.
As I was talking to the FBI agent, Tom called in a second time, and I clicked over, and I immediately told him about the World Trade Center. And then he said, oh my God, it's a suicide mission.
Above Florida, the president and his chief of staff are on Air Force One.
I knew I had to keep the president secure. That's why the venue of choice was Air Force One, because the president had pretty darn good communications, and we had the resources to go almost anywhere in the world.
The media starts to speculate where the president is.
The president is now airborne. He's on a 747, perhaps, we believe, Air Force One. We don't know if he's coming to Washington or if they're simply keeping him in the air.
Air Force One must eventually land. Andrew Card helps decide where.
We knew we could land someplace. I mean, we had lots of options. Believe me, we had lots of options. We were looking for the best possible option. Fortuitously, there was an Air Force base in Louisiana that was in the middle of a nuclear exercise, the highest level of security, and that made a wonderful spot for us to go. But we were not running away, and in fact, he was anxious to get back to Washington.
In Washington, the Pentagon is burning.
This is the worst terror attack in U.S. history.
The huge question is what has happened to the people inside those buildings.
It is a terrible thing to think of your country being attacked. The only thing comparable would have been Pearl Harbor.
Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld is inside the Pentagon.
We had to move between various command centers because the smoke filled a large fraction of the building.
Amid fears of another attack, Rumsfeld must decide whether to evacuate the entire building.
The purpose of terrorism is not to kill people, it's to alter behavior. It's to terrorize people sufficiently that they do things that the terrorists want them to do. I decided that one of the things we would try to avoid would be to evacuate the building completely and shut down the Department of Defense and have them achieve that which they obviously wanted and intended.
Al-Qaeda almost killed Kelly Ryer. But he's alive and battling back. Ryer is helping his colleague evacuate the South Tower. Donna Spira is badly injured. Progress is slow.
As the smoke cleared, we could see that there were a group of people walking by us very quickly, screaming that you can't go down, you can't go down, you need to go up.
Going up makes sense if helicopters are evacuating from the roof. But there is no such plan, and the doors to the roof are locked.
They just walked right by us.
Ryer can go up with the others, or follow his instincts.
I was not going to go up. Fire goes up. I wasn't going up.
They descend over 400 feet, 38 stories. Then Ryer's heart sinks. On the 40th floor, the stairwell is blocked. All the way down, he's past people going up. Now he knows why.
It looked like perhaps an elevator had come through the stairwell. The walls had collapsed. The beams were down. Faced with the choice to go back or not, I just had an immediate sense of survival. We realized that if we moved some of the beams from the floor onto the banister, we could create a little triangle area with sheetrock on the stairs that we could slide down. Donna was pretty badly injured. I wouldn't let her stall or stop on the stairs. I said, we are going to get out of this building, and if I have to throw you over my shoulder and carry you, we're going to get out of this building.
After 50 minutes and 78 stories, Kelly Ryer and Donna Spira exit the South Tower.
You know, we're bloody, bleeding, you know, the only people looking like we're coming out of the explosion. And the minute we came out, a U.S. Marshal came up and just scooped Donna out of my arms. At that point, I was, you know, elated that I was out of the building, you know, that feeling of I've survived.
Al-Qaeda's attack on America triggers Cold War military protocols. The defense readiness condition is raised to DEFCON 3. It's only been higher during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I knew that our forces were going up on alert, our military forces. And I had been schooled and taught about the spiral of alerts. American military forces alert, Russian forces alert, we alert, they alert. And pretty soon, you're at DEFCON 1 and near war just on the basis of alerts.
Rice picks up the hotline to the Kremlin.
So I called President Putin and I said, Mr. President, our forces will be going up on alert. He said, I know, we've seen them.
Roger, set locked.
Ours are coming down. We've canceled an exercise. You don't have to worry about us. Is there anything else that we can do? And for one moment, I had this moment of reflection. I thought, the Cold War is really over. It's really over.
But a new kind of war is just beginning. Three planes, 3 teams of hijackers, 3 disasters. How many more? Thousands of aircraft laden with passengers and jet fuel are still in the air. America's leaders face a terrible dilemma.
1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5.
Have you asked the question what you're going to do if we actually find this guy? Are we going to shoot him down if they got passengers on board? Have they talked about that?
Only the president can give the order to shoot down a civilian aircraft. It's never been done in U.S. history. President Bush is on the line to the White House bunker.
The vice president and I were standing side to side, and he was on the phone, and I could hear his side of the conversation. And he was asking the president what he should tell the Pentagon to do if a plane was not responding properly. And I remember mouthing to myself, I don't even know if it was audible to the vice president, we'll have to shoot it down. We'll have to shoot it down.
Chief of Staff Andrew Card is with the president on Air Force One.
The president was asked about authorizing a pilot to shoot down a commercial jetliner. And he said, I was an Air National Guard pilot. And I can't imagine getting in a plane and taking off and then being given an order to shoot down a commercial plane.
The president has misgivings, but makes his decision.
They got the order from the president, and it was passed on to the Pentagon that, in fact, that would be our action.
Vice President has cleared. Vice President has cleared us to intercept tracks, shoot them down if they do not respond first.
Crashed into the buildings. One of the planes was hijacked.
We all knew that we were under attack. I didn't know if there were other airplanes coming in. I just needed to get airborne as soon as possible.
Mark Sassville, F-16 pilot, Andrews Air Force Base near Washington.
My brain was on hyperdrive. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through. I recognized my stress symptoms, and I do remember thinking at some point, wow, so this is what the combat surge feels like.
Yeah, he's holding over at Kennedy waiting for directions. Stand by just a second.
Mark Sassville is ready to fight, but his F-16 is only prepared for a training mission.
We didn't have time to put missiles on the airplane. All we had was the internal gun, and the type of bullets that were in the internal gun were training rounds, which don't explode on impact.
I need somebody up here.
It was more important for us to get airplanes in the air immediately than it was to wait for all those missiles to get loaded on the airplanes.
Mode 3-1-3-0-4.
Well, they're probably not squawking anything anyway. I mean, obviously these guys are in the cockpit.
These guys are smart.
Yeah, they knew exactly what they wanted to do.
Sassville knows he may have to risk his own life to stop the suicide bombers.
And without missiles, the only way for me to actually bring the airplane down would have been to use one of my own wings to drive past it as quickly as possible and see if I could basically saw it off, essentially ramming the airliner. One hand on the stick, one hand on the ejection handle, and if my airplane quit flying because its wing got sawed off when I sawed off the other wing, then so be it. I might be able to pull the ejection handle and maybe not.
We don't have a place on him yet. We don't know where he's at yet.
Air traffic controllers are aware of a rogue plane heading toward Washington.
Deviating away. You don't have a type aircraft, so you don't know who he is.
But not its exact location.
We were on Air Force One, and there were reports of a plane that was not responding to the FAA communications, that it had changed course and turned around over Ohio or Pennsylvania and appeared to be heading to Washington, D.C. And there was tremendous angst and fear. Was it real? Was it heading to the White House?
There's nothing anyone can do on Air Force One. Those already in the White House bunker know they could be hit at any moment.
I remember absolutely no feeling of personal vulnerability, just a sense that we were caught in this extraordinary moment, and we'd better find a way to get through it.
The plane threatening Washington is United 93. It's less than 30 minutes away. The fate of the Capitol is in the hands of its passengers and crew. On board is Tom Burnett. He calls his wife Dina again.
He told me he was putting a plan together to take back the airplane. And I asked who was helping him. He said there's a group of us. I told him to sit down, be quiet, and not draw attention to himself. He scolded me for even having told him that. He told me that the hijackers were talking about crashing their plane into the ground. And he said, we can't let them do that. We're going to do something. And I remember thinking, he's right. He's right, they have to do something.
Sitting near Tom is Mark Bingham, Alice Hoagland's son. He called her earlier, but was cut off.
After we were disconnected, I was pretty desperate. And we stood around in the kitchen trying to figure out what to do. And I was very grateful when my brother suggested, call him back on his cell phone and tell him that it's a terrorist attack. Tell him that he's got to get control of the airplane. He's got to fight with the other people that are there because there's not going to be any help coming from the ground.
Mark, this is your mom. It's 10:54 a.m. The news is that it's been hijacked by terrorists. They are planning to probably use the plane as a target to hit some site on the ground. Try to overpower these guys if you can. I love you, sweetie. Bye.
When he told me that they were waiting until they were over a rural area to take back the plane, it hit me that this may not go well, and that he knew this may not go well. I could hear the hum of the engines in the background, and just before he hung up, one more time, he said, we're going to do something. And he hung up the phone, and I held on to it for hours, thinking he would call one more time.
United 93, Cleveland, do you still hear the center? United 93, do you still hear Cleveland?
News of another plane crash reaches the White House bunker. America's leaders assume that their Air Force is responsible.
Everyone in that room thinks that perhaps it's been shot down. I got on the phone with somebody at the National Military Command Center, and I can't to this day tell you who it was, just saying, you must know whether or not you've shot down a commercial airliner or not. That was just a horrible thought.
United 93, have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
I hate to sound callous saying this, but I think everybody in the FAA, when we heard that he crashed, when we knew where he crashed, we felt relief because he did not hit a major population center.
The crashed plane is Flight 93, brought down by its Al-Qaeda pilot after the passengers and crew stormed the cockpit.
Mark and Tom and the other guys that fought were able to do what the military and the airlines were not able to accomplish. They became the first line of defense against terrorism on that day.
As I've reflected now on what the passengers and crew of Flight 93 did, first of all, there's a sense of personal gratitude that they may well have saved my life, me, personally. I also think of what they did for the country, because had another plane hit the White House or the Capitol, I just don't think we had much more capacity to absorb greater shock than we already had.
Washington is safe for now.
United 395, Indy Center.
Air traffic controllers have landed or diverted 3/4 of the planes in the sky, but over 1,000 remain.
West 115, contact Indy Center on 1.
Hijack alerts still pour in to Air Traffic Manager Ben Sliney.
We didn't know that that was the end of the hijackings for that day. Until all the aircraft were down, I think that all of us in the command center were apprehensive about what was the next aircraft that was going to be involved.
Air Force fighters now patrol over major cities, but communications remain patchy.
Like everyone else in the country, I, at that time, had every confidence that our military was just up to handling anything. But the sad fact is that the disconnect in the communication was just too bad. They use a radar system, but it's not the same radar system that we use. They're based on latitudes and longitudes. We use degree distance from navigational aids.
Department of Defense was not organized or designed to attack civilian airplanes in the United States. All of our radars were pointed out for an external attack, not an attack of an American airliner that takes off from Boston or Washington or New York.
The assumption that you're going to have a good surveillance system and that the ground controller, the airborne controllers will be able to point you in the right direction. When that goes, you're basically blind. And that's the situation that we were operating under for quite some time.
Inside the battered Pentagon, Dick Myers has seen his Air Force struggle to cope all morning.
It wasn't so much powerlessness, it's more uncertainty. Okay, to me anyway, the way it impacted me, what is next? Is it going to happen today, or is it planned tomorrow? Is it going to happen in the United States, or is it going to happen in Britain, or Japan, or India? I mean, what is next?
The city subway system, as we've been telling you, is shut down. We want the attention of all New York City firefighters. A total recall is in effect. All firefighters and officers should report to duty. You are needed.
We're on the 43rd floor.
Oriel Palmer, Deputy Chief of Battalion 7, puts his life on the line scouting the South Tower.
He liked to jog. He would pick the highest heat of the afternoon to take his run, when on the radio they were telling everybody not to jog at that hour. So he used to say he did it to stay in shape for his job.
Palmer radios back to his commander on the ground. This is the actual recording.
He was assessing the situation like he would any other job that he was on.
Oriel Palmer climbs, determined to get to the crash site. Around him, 2 gigantic steel skeletons are at breaking point. The initial impact severed load-bearing columns.
These stairway walls have been compromised on 73 and 74, so be careful.
The jet fuel burned out in minutes, but offices and elevator shafts are still ablaze.
With my police, I saw the pockets of fire. We should be able to knock it down with 2 lines. Where you go that? 78th floor, and it's number 1045 call horn.
No more civilians, there's 2 engines up here.
Oriole Palmer makes it to the 78th floor. No other firefighter is known to have gotten so high.
We're about the stairs going up to 79. Okay. I'm on my way up, Oriole.
As the perimeter columns bend, the ceilings they support begin to fall. One floor drops. Then the next, triggering a pancake collapse.
And all of a sudden somebody said, "Oh my God."
We were all kind of silent and aghast.
The building was approximately 1,500 feet high. The first thing I thought of was, am I 1,500 feet away from the base of that building? And if not, run.
Kelly Ryer, facing death again, having just escaped the South Tower.
Behind me, you could just feel this wave of air, and this massive hurricane cloud of debris just washes over you. And so I wedged myself in between the sidewalk and the cement wall with my face in my hands, breathing in dust particles. This gook is forming in your nose, in your throat, and in your mouth. First, it's so black initially that you can't see anything, and all of a sudden what was black turned to a darker gray, then to a gray, then realizing I'm alive again.
Maybe there'd been a little bit of hope that you were going to be able to rescue people. Even if the floors where the plane had gone in, you couldn't survive that, people could get out. But suddenly realizing that a lot of people weren't going to get out, that was really, really terrible.
It's gone! They knocked the whole freaking thing down!
With one tower down, billions around the world now stare at the North Tower with a sense of inevitability.
Our building swayed back and forth. We felt an earthquake-like rumble.
On the 27th floor, Jay Jonas is with his 5-man crew.
The sister building to the one I was in, and it was hit after my building was hit, has just collapsed. And every fiber in my being was screaming, get out of this building. Go, get out.
A minute after the South Tower collapse, all emergency responders are told to evacuate. Jonas's radio is temporarily down, but he makes the same decision himself.
I did want to make it up to the crash site and help as many people as we could, but it was an instinct of mine that I just looked at my guys and said, all right, guys, if that one can go, this one can go. It's time for us to get out of here. I knew that we'd be lucky to get out of here alive. To use a cliche that, we were dead men walking.
But on the 20th floor, they pause.
We were going down the stairway, right around the 20th floor. We saw a woman. She looked like she was in distress.
Josephine Harris, has made it down from the 73rd floor. Exhausted, her life is now in Jay Jonas's hands.
My legs are not working. They just weren't working. My legs were tired. I was tired.
Tommy Falco turned around to me and looked at me and says, "Hey, Cap, what do you want to do with her?" I knew what kind of danger we were in. Whatever's going to slow us down is going to bring us closer to a fatal decision. And I just said, all right, bring her with us. We'll do the best we can.
Lower Manhattan is completely enveloped in smoke, and the simple goal of anyone down there is to get to safety.
As we're getting closer, I'm starting to get more and more encouraged. Once we got to the 10th floor, I felt pretty good. And then, once we got into the single digits, I'm like, okay, maybe this building isn't going to collapse.
Then, on the 4th floor, Josephine gives up.
I was tired. I felt like I was slowing them down. And somewhere along in there, I said to them, just leave me, leave me.
Oh, we were a little frustrated. We were under extreme stress that, we're getting out of here and we're bringing you with us. And she's yelling at us to leave her. Let's go. We gotta go. I looked at her and we couldn't leave her.
Jonas decides to carry Josephine in a chair. He just needs to find one.
The adrenaline is just pumping away in your system. Look for the chair, find the chair, because it's going to get us out of here quicker.
In one of the biggest office buildings in the world, Jonas has broken into a machine room. There are no chairs.
Something just told me, I said, you know what? This isn't working out. You're just going to have to drag her down the stairs. I felt the building move a little bit. War actually kind of had waves in it, like a ripple effect, like waves on a lake. It's like being in the middle of an earthquake and a tornado at the same time. As the building's collapsing, it's compressing the air and it's creating very strong gusty winds. This loud screeching sound. And inside this wind is debris, and we're getting pelted with debris as this collapse is getting closer and closer. And the closer it's getting, the louder it's getting. And the vibration is so intense that we're bouncing off the floor.
It was like boom, 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 boom.
Boom, 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 boom. And that noise was getting closer. We're just bouncing around, getting hit with debris, hearing all these sounds. And I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm going to die right here. That this is where it ends.
The shock of seeing those towers collapse and knowing now that the casualty numbers were probably going to go way up and that it probably meant that nobody survived who was still trapped in that tower.
2,605 people die in and around the World Trade Center, including 411 emergency workers. Their comrades scour the site.
Mayor Giuliani says we do not need any.
We have 6 fatalities.
As to the number of people who might have perished, he says the numbers may be very, very high.
Tragically, there are going to be a lot more than that. But that's
the medical examiner is prepared to accept thousands and thousands of bodies if they have to.
It was also very sad because we kept asking Mayor Giuliani, was there anything that we could do to help the National Guard or whatever with triage? And at some point he said that he'd been given the sad news that actually there weren't that many survivors to help.
The Twin Towers are pulverized, dust. But faint radio noise makes it through the rubble.
Unit with an urgent, go ahead. So we got numbers of people trapped here for continuous collapse. Are you pinned in a piece of apparatus? All right, we're going to get some members over there to assist you. You have help on the way. You receive that? There is help on the way. Hey, person transmitting the Mayday.
I said, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is ladder 6. We're trapped in the B stairway. Eventually, I got a response.
Person transmitting the Mayday. Where are you, Jay?
Rescue 3 to ladder 6. Captain J. Jonas, this is Cliff. I'm coming to get you, brother. I'm coming to get you. I said, okay, things are looking up. They know we're here.
There was a fireman that came in. He was very, very tall, like a giant. And I'm looking up at this fireman and says, "You're a fireman? You should be a basketball player." They put me in the basket. And I had my pocketbook. And he says, "You just not let go of that pocketbook." And I said to myself, "No, because my keys are in there. And I'm going home."
A reinforced ceiling deflected debris away from stairwell B, saving Jonas, his crew, and Josephine Harris.
You know, my first thought was like, oh my God, I can't believe we just lived through this.
Thousands of individuals make a difference on 9/11. Those at the heart of the emergency will be marked by the day forever.
You know, you look down that list of people who did die that day, they were in the wrong spot. You know, we happen to be in the right spot.
When the plane crashed, how did he really feel? What were his last thoughts? You know, and questions like that linger for a lifetime.
I will never forget September 11th. I know the president will never forget September 11th, and the sacrifices that were made, and the burdens that were left on families.
My calendar for that day, I've since retrieved. And there were lots of things on it, meetings with this person and meetings with that. And my secretary, when it happened, just put a large X through it and said, "America attacked 9/11." And that said it all. Nothing else that we were going to do that day, nothing else that we were going to do after that day was ever the same. Because for those of us in positions of authority on September 11th, every day after was September 12th.